This is Joanne, founder, CEO, and brand strategist of 10 Plus Brand, a multiple award-winning brand building and brand marketing full-service agency. I'm also the producer and host of the podcast, Interviews of Notables and Influencers on 10 Plus Podcast. I am extremely honored to have Dr. Steve Kerr today, a global authority, thought leader, and author on the use and misuse of organizational rewards. For 5 decades, Dr. Kerr's paper on the folly of rewarding A while hoping for B has been one of the most cited and reprinted in the management sciences. Dr. Kerr was a senior advisor to Goldman Sachs and its chief learning officer for 6 years, where he created Pine Street, the firm's distinctive leadership development organization. Prior to that, Dr. Kerr worked with General Electric's legendary CEO, Jack Welch, as GE's VP of Corporate Leadership Development and Chief Learning Officer for 7 years. He led and expanded the renowned Leadership Education Center at Crotonville with Mr. Welch and was the head of the famous GE workout. After leaving Goldman Sachs, he again worked with Mr. Welch, serving as co-founder and the first executive director of the Jack Welch Management Institute. During the last 8 years of Mr. Welch's tenure in GE, when the company was labeled by a number of media outlets as the world's best-run company, a number of systems and programs initiated in GE was subsequently adopted by numerous private and public sector organizations around the world. Several of the tools Dr. Kerr devised in GE to operationalize these initiatives were identified in his book, Reward Systems. Dr. Kerr was also a faculty member at several universities, such as University of Michigan, and was the dean of faculty at USC Business School for 10 years. He was national president of the Academy of Management, the largest US academic organization. Currently, even in his retirement, Dr. Kerr has been a consultant to many of the world's largest corporations, as well as a senior advisor to the US Department of Homeland Security. His many board memberships include the board of directors of Harvard Business School Publishing. Thank you, Dr. Kerr, for this great privilege, and welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
There are some timeless gems of wisdom in your paper and book that I summarize as, for the workforce to perform and deliver organizational goals, leaders need to define, measure, and reward performance. So those 3 elements: define, measure, and reward performance. Since it's not enough to solely rely on A, selecting only those individuals whose goals and motives are wholly consonant with those of management, and or B, training, because selecting so-called the right people and training are not enough. There needs to be an effective reward system that rewards the right behaviors, performance, and results for the right goals in the right way, and must be measured correctly, which in turn are dependent on clear, shared, agreed upon, overarching goals. You also distinguish between rewarding performance and results, which to me is causal or sequential. We need to first be very clear about what desired results are and what performance will lead to the desired results before devising appropriate rewards to avoid the folly of rewarding A while hoping for B. The listeners among the growing audience of 10 Plus Brand encompasses leaders of mid-market, tech entrepreneurs, B2B service firms of attorneys, bankers, CPAs, consultants, executive coaches, board members of large public organizations and private companies, B2B small business owners, some of whom were previously executives at large corporations. So question number one, to help the audience get a grasp about what reward systems are, in the hope that they may find it useful for leading their companies, could you give us examples or tell us stories about both the use and the abuse of rewards?
Oh, sure, I'd be happy to. Rewards are often formal. Financial rewards are the one that are most commonly associated with the term, but really some of the most important rewards and most powerful are the non-financial rewards, and especially in early stages where cash is desperately needed to grow businesses. It's dependent on even the ones that will eventually be financial, things like deferred compensation, things like stock options, they're financial, but they don't kick in right away. So even when you're going to depend on those in the interim, and for every organization, there are periods of time when money is scarce or is used for other purposes. So the idea of providing feedback, which is often considered almost a punishment, because in a way, negative feedback helps more than positive, but it has to be done in the right way, and it can easily make people defensive. But so people don't think of that, but it's an honor. It's a way of being recognized that people know you, are watching you, want you to do better. And positive feedback, of course, can be a very strong reward. And then responsibility, being given access to information that was previously privileged. Promotions are obviously another form of recognition. They often, again, are accompanied by more money. So it's not that the non-financials never have financial implications, but in fact, their main use is to provide recognition, a sense of accomplishment, and those are very powerful ones. As an example, some of them are very important at the time, but they're one shots. Like when a window office opens up, and then you'll have many people vying for it, and it's not something you can reproduce, and you can't give it to more than one. So people often cop out, and they start using, instead of measuring performance, which hopefully is how rewards are distributed, they would now make it seniority is often a determinant, for example, of a number of rewards, including who gets the parking close to the building and who gets the corner office and things like that. So they're not bad rewards, but you said examples of good ones. Here's one, just it's a classic. You have competitive forces, whether they're people in divisions or you have brother and sister, and you have rivalries, and they're always fussing over everything. And an excellent reward where the parent brings home a very nice cake and has a knife and says, Johnny, you're going to cut the cake, and Sally, you're going to get the first piece. You're going to cut it in 2 pieces. And they're no less competitive than they were before, but the way the reward was structured, now you're going to find Johnny cuts the cake with surgical precision. He's panicked that if one side is bigger than the other, his sister's going to get the bigger piece. So again, sometimes it's not changing people's basic nature, but it's the way rewards are, it's called contingent. Some rewards are always going to be based on membership. You belong to the organization, we have a cafeteria, or we have a nurse if you have a problem, or you have parking. Those are not, they can be discriminated, but a lot of these are just available if you need them. And that's fine, but they don't encourage performance. You get what you reward, and they're not rewarding performance. Other rewards are based on seniority. So it's not just being a member, but it asks the question, how long have you done it? How long have you done that job? And then the reward is triggered by how usually more seniority equals the better office, even more pay though. And that's okay also, but there has to be a lot left over for the third way basis for distribution, and that is performance. And in many cases, it isn't. In many cases, if you tell me your title or how long you've been there, I can pick everything from the size of your office to the size of your paycheck. And I haven't even found out if you're a good performer. Now, rewards can be delayed. So you might say, well, your title determines your pay, but performance determines your title. We don't promote other than qualified people. So it's indirect, and you might want to have short-term thank yous or other ways of, because timeliness is another characteristic of a good reward. One, it has to be available. So developing firms, startups can't use money a lot because it's not always available. And then the idea of timeliness, some rewards, like in Wall Street, where I worked with Goldman, you will give rewards, but you need to add up how well you did before you know how to distribute rewards among the senior people and the junior people. So the rewards can't be timely because you can't commit before you know how much you have, and sometimes that waits. And then you have, but performance contingency should be one of the factors. I'm not saying the only one, but often it's almost irrelevant. In teaching where seniority determines most everything. But there are examples of very good rewards as well. Can I describe one, or do you want to ask another question?
I have a question. You said it sounds to me that among seniority, among membership, and performance should be the most important criteria.
It should be important. I mean, some societies are built around seniority. The prestige you get just by being older in places like Japan, in some Asian countries, but some here too. That's pretty important, and it's not bad that rewards would be based on that. But again, if your seniority is governed by how good a job you do, or at least your position in that higher title is based on performance, then a lot of things can be not based on performance, but in a way they are. They're indirectly so. So performance would get you to be a senior executive in GE or at Goldman. Once there, a number of things came automatically, but you wouldn't have been access to these unless you were a good performer. So it works that way.
And rewarding performance should be timely because people need that immediacy, rather than delayed, but also it needs to be transparent, right?
The visibility is another characteristic of a good reward. Transparency is a good word to use for it. If you can give people a secret, and they do it sometimes because they know they're going to have 40 people angry if they find out. But you've either rewarded 0 people because he thought he should have gotten more, or you're rewarding one person who's happy. But since other people know, that's a very expensive way to do it. So ideally, it should be transparent or visible. And that a character of a good reward, that puts pressure on your measurement system, which is why I said rewards have to be the third thing. Because when they found out Ernie got a big raise or a salary increase, or a promotion, that's okay. But if they look at Ernie as a mediocre performance who just played up to the boss, that is a negative reinforcement for everybody else. So again, you alluded to it, but the rewards have to be the third thing you do. Measurement has to be the second thing you do. Otherwise, you can't reward high performance if you really don't know who they are.
Right.
And in turn has to be based on a clear definition of what it is people are supposed to be doing and operationalizing it. That is, what behaviors do we look at? What numbers do we see? Some are, a return on investment. Very few people are going to be able to be singly determining of that. So you have to have all kinds of sub goals and some measurements that will apply at the level so everyone is connected and used properly. It's motivational. And then when the rewards come, everybody would like to get them, but at least they know in my boss's eyes, I was not in a high performance category. You may resent it, but now you have a course of action. Now you have a meeting with your boss and you say, let me know, I'm not saying good or bad, but let me know what I need to do better so I will be in that cadre next time. So that's why your rewards depend on measurement. Measurement depends on goals that have been operationalized and objectives that are made tangible so people know what it is they work on.
Right. But first and foremost, you got to know what the purpose of setting up a reward system is. Then you can figure it out. You define that goal and purpose, and then you figure out, is this measurable? Is it transparent? Is it timely? And then you implement the rewards and the measurement, right?
And we had an exercise that we had in G and also at Goldman, and I'm sure many others use it, which was called the bullseye exercise, which started by saying, we won't even look at rewards. What is it we're trying to do? And this can be at the company level for senior executives, and it could be one department or one branch or one region or one person's job even. And that's what you say. And then the exercise is to say, it's backward looking. You say it's 12 months from today, and we're celebrating, and you're enjoying a raise, you're enjoying more responsibility. We're all excited, we're all happy. What are we doing? What has occurred during that 12 months that led to this? And doing is a key word. It's not wrong to say, oh, our return on investment way up, our return on sales is good, our operating margin has improved, profits are up. But you don't, it's too broad. You can't, I want more money. Heaven knows what they would do. You say, we're looking back 12 months ago. What is it we did in these 12 months that have led to this change? And if it's negative, it's more of an autopsy, so it's not as much fun, but it's the same question. What did we do that we have to stop doing? Or what did we fail to do that we've got to start? And then the bullseye says, that's how it starts. Put down the thing. What is it? And if you set goals going forward, what do we want to do? 12 months from now, looking back on today, if we do our jobs, what will we say? What are we doing more of? What are we doing less of? What have we started doing? What have we stopped doing? Very simple. The mailman, the guy in the Xerox room, everybody can follow it up to the senior executives. Define performance. And then, but usually it'll say, well, we want more teamwork. We want more passion. We want more. And that in a bullseye, that's the middle circle. It's not bad. You're on the way to what you need, but there's always a follow-up question. Imagine Division 5 has teamwork. Division 6 does not. What is 5 doing that 6 isn't doing? Or what is 6 doing that 5 isn't doing? So those are the things. Can we agree if we do more of those, we'll have that. So it's always that's hitting the bullseye, means describe the behaviors. And if you do that, you'll find even the things that people don't think can be rewarded. Oh, we need more passion. You can reward anything, but you see, those people are passionate. Or 12 months from now, we're more passionate. What would a person see? What are we doing differently? And what numbers will reflect that? And if you have that, anything you can behaviorally describe, you can measure. And anything you measure, you can reward. So I had a person actually said to me, the old workforce, we had more passion. The senior executive is mourning the passing of the culture. I said, it's not gone forever. What did these people do that these people today are not doing? Well, they shared information. They would come to me. So, I mean, and sometimes they get the middle circle, and it's still not there. You say, what's the action? What they get them. And once you have that, once you've hit the bullseye, now you also can disagree. If people say, I want more team building, who's going to say, no, I want less team building. I want better teamwork. But often it means different things to different people. And if you don't hit the bullseye, let's all go out and have more passion. And people, Ernie, what are you doing? Well, you remember you said that isn't it. Well, it is to Ernie. So behavior, nobody can argue. And then once you're there, you can always measure. So when I was working with him, a CEO, and once he said, here's what I miss in the actions of the people that used to work here compared to today's workforce. Now we know what to measure. Now we know what to teach. Now we know what to reward. All the HR systems kick in, but as long as you say this, we're going to be more trusting, you can't go anywhere with those things.
So here's my question. Before I ask that question, which is, how can you measure passion versus trust? You said trust is hard to measure, but passion is measurable. So I will deal with that question later. But before that, I want to explain what both eyes in your design. So in the center is behavior, is what behavior, what action can be changed, can be rewarded. And the outer rim is, what's the outer rim? When you go from the center behavior outwards, is that the plans, performance, and motivations, and then you go another ring to the edge. That's the corporate mission, corporate goals, and strategies. Did I describe it correctly?
You did. And the answer is all of the above. Many times, once we taught the bullseye exercise, it's so easy. You're not paying expensive consultants. You're not interrupting. Sometimes we're talking past each other in a meeting. It could be division heads, or it could be first line supervisors, or it could be one team. And somebody say, bullseye drill. I mean, he's calling for it. You can do it in the lunch hour, bullseye drill. Okay, what are we talking about here? So if we want to use the word passion, in this case, it was a CEO. So the way I addressed it, I said, why do you say these people don't have passion today? And then he starts, he doesn't know about bullseyes, he doesn't need to. Well, he says, we didn't even have a clock to punch, but these people, they stayed, we didn't want to leave until something was done. We worked. So he's saying, so basically, what do you see today? Today, at 5 to 4, they're watching the clock ready to leave if they leave at 4 o'clock. So he's just, so he doesn't know about bullseye, but now it's okay. So, you can fake it. If you say, oh, you're going to get rewarded if you stay till 4, they'll start staying till 4. But he said, we didn't think about that. So in the beginning, you maybe have to teach the behaviors, and it doesn't mean they have the right attitude, but in the end, it doesn't matter. If people behave, like the person who said he wanted teamwork, I'm going to use that as an example, if I can. Welch was, we had wonderful teamwork within divisions and within departments and within the GE businesses, but across businesses, they were rivals. And if somebody needed a very good electrical engineer, maybe appliances needs one for what they're doing, and power system has one, they would never give him up because this is my guy. And if I give him up, I have a vacancy and I have to worry about it. So a lot of things happen. And Welch always said, a conglomerate or a holding company gets 15 to 18 times earnings in a stock evaluation. We get 28. And yet we're in every business, every SIC, every country in the world, and we are given the price multiple of an integrated corporation. And he said, it's amazing. No one else is like that, the other conglomerates. So he said, that's what we have to do. So for example, we had these meetings. I was part of the corporate executive council. We met every quarter, and when Welch came in, they met in the first week of the new quarter, and they did a look at, the third quarter, the books are now in, what do we do? They kind of do an autopsy of the quarter, or they do an analysis. And so if it was a bad, Welch said, we're not doing that anymore. He says, I don't want to do an autopsy of last quarter. I want to fix it. So he created the first week of the third month of every quarter. You report your earnings per quarter. The first week of the third month of every quarter we met, and he had 2 questions. Question 1, who's in trouble? So see, now we didn't use the word teamwork, but we needed it. But something, but who's in trouble? So, one example. So the power system guy says, economies are tight. People are not investing in capital equipment. Power systems was a big business. We're hurting. We're really having trouble closing sales, and we still got 1 month, but we can't. And there were others, but I'll stay with one example. And then the second question was, who can help? Who's in trouble? Who can help? Now, this was different. We consolidated because we have to report corporate earnings, but lighting didn't. I wouldn't say they didn't care. That's not that they're mean, but they're not going to worry about power systems problems. They're certainly not going to give their good people to another. So who can help? So here's an example. GE Capital, which is another business that's doing well. They said, well, why is this problem? Why is sales lower than expected? Money is tight and people are having trouble borrowing. The interest rates are high, and power system, you buy a giant turbine, it's a lot of money. So GE Capital, which has a lot of money, they said, we can help. Now, and they said, we're going to give you funding rates. You can offer your people rates that are way lower than the other competitors are doing. And it helped sales. And Gary ran Capital at that time. And he knew when it came time to review, no one was going to help him. If he didn't solve his problem, he's now given below market rates. No one's going to forgive him if his numbers are down. So it's teamwork. He knows I'm helping. One more example, they're opening up a new lighting plant in Norway or someplace. and they need a particular kind of engineer, and they can't find it in the local market. That's like, meanwhile, in appliances, they got a guy who's perfect. Now, old GE, I need that guy. I'm not going to, who can help? So the guy gets up, he says, I've got a guy. He doesn't do it happily. He's sick. He knows he's going to have to find a replacement. They need him more than lower. The opportunity in lighting is better than he can use it in appliances. Those are examples. So look what you're doing. You didn't have to use the word teamwork, but you institutionalize systems. And the guy in appliances, if he misses his numbers, well, he gave a guy like, it's not going to help him at all. But down deep, Welch is watching. These are team players. So I'm saying, these are different examples because I didn't stick around. I was visiting. I tried to help the guy who told me he missed his passion. He wasn't. But that's what you do. You set up things. And another one, when Power Systems, NBC stepped up. This was the year 2000. And what made it special was the Olympics are in Australia that year. And it's Sydney Harbor, Darling Harbor, it's beautiful there. And it's great. The weather's good. It's December. So GE Capital has got an exclusive for all the Olympics, and they're going to take their top executives and their biggest customers, and they rent yachts, and these guys are going to live good, and they're going to go between Darling Harbor and Sydney Harbor and all the other sites and see the different events. And NBC's using it for NBC's clients, but now they had Bob Wright ran NBC, and he said, "All right, we can help." And he said, we're going to have a lot of spots open, and Power Systems, you can invite your best customers, and they'll come on these yachts. So we have the MD celebrity, the cast of Friends is coming, and all this stuff. So and Power Systems, a grungy business, they don't have any glamour. So now they're offering to these people, hey, we got spots, come on the yacht, we'll enjoy the Olympics. And we got the cast of Friends and the cast of The West Wing is going to be there. And they sold it. I mean, that's the kind of things. I mean, it was a different culture. And the whole thing, I used the word teamwork, but we had a number of objectives. And I could give you the same thing. And one last thing, because I think it may be useful. Friction point. Lighting wants to get into aircraft engines because the Boeing and Lockheed, the big companies, are buying their lighting products from Honeywell or somebody else. But they're buying engines from GE. Now, geez, they're servicing it. They got great machines, great engines, great. But now, who's in trouble? So the lighting people are losing big market. And who can help? Well, who else looks at the guy from engines? The guy from engines has got a lot of good contacts inside of these companies because Lockheed and Boeing are buying our engines. So they say, and sometimes they're not that noble. So Welch will say, it seems to me, engines guy, can't you help them? Don't you have contacts in lighting? So now you're stuck. You can't say no. So he said, okay, so the lighting people, the engines people are not mean, but they have a special relationship with Lockheed and the Boeing, and it's a big deal, and they're big shots because they bring in a lot of money. And if I introduce the lighting people to your top people, two things that might happen, and they're both bad. One is they're not going to like him. Now they get mad at the engines guys. You're bringing these dummies in here. We're supposed to help. The other thing the engines people are afraid of, they will like him. And that's great, except that means I don't own the customer anymore. Now these guys, they don't need me to get in to see. So they're going to like me. Either way, it's not good for engines. But now they got to do it. Go in and they want to have revenue sharing. And the old competitors comes out. Engines want to get 20% because they're letting lighting people in 20% of the business, a royalty. The engines people want 20. The lighting people don't want to give up. They want to give up. The engine people want to give up 10 only. Lighting people want to give up only 20. So one wants 90, the other wants 20. It goes all the way to Welch. I was in the office when they met. I would sometimes just be around. And so what happened was they say, here's why we should get 20. Here's why we should get 90. And Welch said 4 sentences. He said, here's what we're going to do. Engines, you get 90. Lighting, you get 20. Get out of my office. 4 sentences. And if you 90 and 20, that's more than 100. And Jack said, I'm not giving 110 of the sales. I'm giving 110 of the royalty for the sales. It's small. And if I get these guys working together, it's huge. So, but that's examples of how you change the culture of one of the world's largest corporation. We have 1/3 full-time employees, not counting contractors and part-time and interns. We were in every country. And I'll stop. But if you want, I could show other examples of how the businesses, even ones that had nothing in common, work together. So it started with we need teamwork, and then it became not permitting others to fail, not enjoy watching others fail. That was we said not permitting. You can't let power systems fail. You can help, right? Give up part of your ships and let them run around Sydney Harbor with you. and this is the world's one of the world's largest companies. So you can do it. And you can do it with this one guy in his team sitting in Texas where I met him.
So to summarize what you said, they need to create a culture of teamwork. They need to create a culture of not letting anybody else fail, even though I value hoarding my top engineers, because if my top engineers are sent to the other department, I have to look for a replacement.
Exactly.
So the leadership play the role of rewarding collaboration, rewarding teamwork, and that paid off.
Yeah, remember they defined it first. They came up with the definition, and then we saw the measurement. But in the end, you still want to see the payoff. But in the early days, you can't look for the payoff. But yes, you said it exactly right. And it's not one. And we had some failures. No one's saying you do this quickly, but it was amazing. A company of rivals, which had built their business by competition within, and they're helping each other. It's not because happy talk and the fairy dust. It's not. It's just you create systems that encourage it. You have top management. All the classic things were done, and it was amazing. And there were gambles where people didn't and so on. But I mean, it became a culture of teamwork, and rewards were the third thing you did. You had to define it. You had to create the behaviors. You operationalized it. Then you say, how would we measure it? And I gave you examples at the top where you could see it because key people are moving, but you build measurements to see if people are helping each other, and then you get the payoff.
Yes. So if I'm the one who gave up my top engineer to the other department, and then the whole company succeeded, what was my payoff? What was my reward?
In the short run, you have the chore, the punishment of finding replacements, working without this key person. In the medium run, you will have your numbers will be looked at. And if you fail, you're still going to be punished for failing or whatever happens. You won't be rewarded. But you do know that at the top, people are supportive and are looking. And in this case, you had a CEO. I mean, I could tell you stories. He was amazing. He knew what was going on. We had people coming from Asia, guys coming in from I don't know, China, and he's running a second shift. And Jack said, "Is there any still out?" How does Jack notice a guy who's sick on the second shift in China? So I mean, it helps when you have that. So in GE, you had enough, but when you move Crotonville, we help, we build measurements. You could tell, and you could even track. And even though we never forgave a person for missing his numbers, that was a sin. He missed his numbers. But we knew that we had upset lighting by making them give somebody up, or we upset in NBC by they could have stole more to their own customers. They were letting power systems use it for their customers. So in the end, it didn't go unrecognized. And you do need that. If you mindlessly just look at numbers, you'll never get teamwork because people know they're going to be punished. When you punish something, you get less of it. And if you punish passion, you would stay, if you have to show passion by staying till 10 o'clock every night, you're punishing it. You're not going to get it. But we were able to find that guy found ways. He went back to the old days. Why do you think people had passion? He said, here's the things that showed me. I said, what are you seeing now? I'm not seeing that. So, well, good. You've got something. I didn't stay with them long, but you've got something to work on. So it's exactly what you say. And so nothing protects them, but it's worse if you don't do it now. I mean, teamwork may not automatically pay off, but hoarding talent. I mean, we know you got a top engineer. When this guy's saying what he needs in appliances, the lighting, we know that he's describing the key guy in lighting. So you get rewarded in the short run, you get rewarded for behaviors. In the end, you still have to have results. It's called lead indicators, right? You can't know. When we started Six Sigma, we couldn't know we were going to have 0 defects. So we had to measure activities. In the short run, How many projects did we launch? Are they what stage? Analyze, improve, control. How many black belts do we have? What color? We have black belt. You know that's not performance, but it leads to it. And in the short run, you got to measure means because you don't have outcomes yet. But you never kid yourself. You don't let people just, oh, look, I'm adding all these belts. At some point, not too long, you turn your attention to what's the results.
Right.
In the short run, you can't reward results. You reward performance, but it's not results. And you can reward activities before you reward performance. In the beginning, you want to see motion. You want to see doing things. But you never kid yourself that that's the goal, because otherwise people just pretend to do it and they'll never get good at things.
Right. So here's my question about reward. You mentioned just now the relationship between activities and performance and results. Well, as my next question is actually, I believe it's sequential, okay? Activities leads is part of performance, but it may not be. Like you said, you know, you're all focused on getting your belt for the Six Sigma, but what does it lead to? Is it enhancing the performance? It may not, right? The performance will, the correct performance, the rewarded performance, the measurable performance should be all aligned with the results you desire.
Yeah. And but you go back to that bullseye drill, you start by saying it's 12 months from now, what are we doing differently? And if they say, well, have more passion or more teamwork, excuse me, that's the middle circle. That's an attitude. That's not a behavior. What will they do differently? Well, what do passionate people do that people have passion? What do people who should be, what does it look like? What do they do? So you move from the attitude, you really can't measure what's in people's minds. You don't want to try. You move to, you watch them, you watch the actions. You watch the guy get up in the meeting, give up his best engineer because they got a great opportunity in another division. Or Bob Wright gives up his boats because he needs power systems to sell more stuff. But that's good. In the short term, you pay for that because that's what you need. But you don't stop. You know, people can look, they look busy, they shuffle papers. That works for a month. It doesn't work for 3 months. Gee, you don't get through shuffling papers and looking busy. He has meetings, he's always on the phone. What's the result? In the beginning, the result, so I mean, as a result, lighting begins to sell products into Boeing and Lockheed. And even that's not, that's in the end, that's fine. But if they have to introduce, in the beginning, as you know, you may offer lower prices to attract business. You run a sale. But in the end, we still look at the results are really the performance is what's the bottom line.
Mm-hmm. So
And
my next question is, how do the principles of rewarding performance apply to small, mid-size, and growth companies? Any differently from its implementation at large corporations?
the principles are the same. The people are the same. It plays out differently. We already said that startups of any size and small businesses, often cash is the key thing that make or break them. And so financial rewards are deferred. You can still offer options, but you have to believe the stock price is going to go up. Or if it's a private company, there's no stock, but you can do deferred compensation. And so that's one thing that the small companies, you have access to different rewards, but they still do it in the same manner. And the other thing is you won't have the same, I mean, they might be small and yet dispersed, but normally you have closer contact. You can really do more by looking kinds of things. That's one thing. The back to the example I gave, when the guy said people used to come stay late, he didn't know, but it turned out they didn't have a lot of businesses. He wasn't that big, but he had some offices and branches. People were really looking passionate by his definition, but he was in the home office where they didn't do it so much. So that's the point. You don't change your principles, but it plays out very differently. Small meaning one location. You don't need as much looking at numbers if you can feel people and see and interact with them. So a lot of how you get there changes, but you're still going to go from activities to behaviors and operationalize. And then once you have behaviors, you can always measure. Once you measure, you start connecting up the rewards.
Operationalize is what I want to focus on. But before you are going to explain, give some examples of operationalization, I have 2 lingering questions from previous answers you gave. One is the measurement of passion and measurement of trust. One said it can be measured, because when people show passion, their behaviors change, or reversely, you can use behaviors to induce more passionate commitment. Trust is the result of something, it seems to me, okay? So that's one thing I want you to clarify. The other is about the rewards, corner office, parking lot, but there are other non-financial, non-monetary rewards, such as participation in decision-making, recognition. What other non-monetary rewards can be used other than what I just said? So first is your explanation about passion and trust, and the other is non-monetary rewards.
Well, with respect to the passion and trust issue, in the end, it doesn't matter. I mean, if people are passionate or not. It may if you're customer facing people, customers can directly benefit. You can benefit if customers see that people, I'm not just selling a product because I get commission. This is a great, but you can tell if people mean what they say. They recommend you go to their daughter's school and they talk about it. You can just, so it works in that sense. So you can look at the passion. It's still not a substitute. You have people who are passionate, but they still, I have my housekeeper's not there. I'm divorced. I have a kid. He comes home from school. I got to be there when he gets home. So this idea of passion is disconnected. He says, well, the person's leaving, oh, she's not passionate, he's not passionate. So I'm saying you still have to work it out, but you're right in what you say, those things, and it can lead to trust. And trust is also very important as in general for a characteristic of any organization, because rewards are often disconnected. Again, one of the other characteristics we didn't do on is timeliness. Financial Wall Street firms like Goldman, they may be into January before they know they close out the books for the year. There's a lot of, some of the big power systems ones, the machine are delayed, but things come in. And so the point is, you can't do end of year stuff. You really can, yet you don't want to, you can't do a Christmas bonus or whatever the holiday is in a different culture if you don't yet know who you're rewarding. So you have to build, then the trust comes in, because you say, look, there are reasons why they can't do this thing now, but I know that they're watching me. I know that they're going to take care of me because they know I'm a good performer. So if you build that in, then you can create a patience, and people will wait, and it doesn't have to be connected as clearly. But over time, if you see the kid, he apple polishes, he just kind of fakes it, and he's getting these rewards. It kills the culture if you watch that happening. So you may have to wait to delay rewarding the high performance, but you better not be rewarding the political types who suck up to the boss and people don't respect them. Then I don't have any answer for it. That's just bad leadership, and bad leadership will sink a business, which is why we spent so much time.
Yes.
The other thing is, right, again, the point about what you said, the sequence is always that you've got to decide what you want, and usually you don't get it early. So you have to say, what leads to what you want? You want passion? What leads to what can we manipulate to cause that to happen? I'm using that because it's such a tough one. People think those are hard. Most things are easy. Most you don't want passion. You want return on investment. You want higher quality. You want more. Anyway, the systems you use will make or break that. You had a company that wanted to improve customer service. So they decided to count the number of times the phone rang before it was picked up, and people would be swamped, and they would, and if you didn't pick it up, it didn't count. So they were getting rewarded for not answering the phone. If they knew they couldn't get to it quickly, they would just let it ring, because to get on the fourth ring, and it was like their own phone they could handle. But with a trust environment and cooperation, they would go into somebody else's phone and they would take care of it. So the object was keep the customer from waiting. They put in a system so dysfunctional, it began rewarding not answering your phone if you can't pick it up quickly. Things like that. These crazy things will develop but start the right way. What do we want? The behaviors. You don't want behavior, let it ring. So if you start there, you won't get down these crazy blind alleys.
Right. So another question. Among defining, measuring, and rewarding performances, what do you find to be the most challenging for corporate leadership and management in your experience? So that's probably the bullseye wheel.
That's a good question. They might not answer it this way, but I know I'm right. Definition, but the first pass, people aren't disciplined to go hit behaviors. So it's easy for him to say passion is somebody else. I want trust, and G could say teamwork. So definition itself is easy, but operationalization, the second half, that's in the trial. If you think of a real target, the middle circle is attitudes and behaviors. So that then nobody finds that hard. You say, well, what does a passionate person do? They in their heads there must be something. They don't say color of necktie because they don't have in their head that it makes any difference. That guy, he knew what he wanted. He knew there was something, but initially he couldn't put it in words. So that's why you can't measure passion. You can't measure it. You can't, of course not, because you haven't described it behaviorally. But you must be thinking of something. If nobody acted different, why would you care if they have passion or not? You don't care if they've had breakfast or not, unless you find they can't work because they're running to the cafeteria in the middle of the morning. So that's the thing. It's the operationalization. Because once you get behavioral, it's easy to measure. You can film it. You can tape record it. You can ask other people if they see them doing it. You can observe things yourself. You can look at their so everything gets easy if you can operationalize. And once you've measured something, you may have not much funds. You may have to use non-financial rewards. But the key is knowing who the right ones are to reward. You can reward 5 high performers. And if you also reward a person nobody respects, who just kisses up to the boss, you get nothing. So you got to be able to reward. But once you've measured, it's not hard. I mean, resources may not be there, but some people think, well, what's equal money? If you don't pay people, eventually they don't stay. But in the short run, there are more things more important than money. And even money is often used for another purpose. You can often find, I mean, if they needed to pay the mortgage, you can't help them a lot, except, loan, have something. But if they want prestige, they want pride, they want to be something in the neighborhood, you can give them things, be it in terms of titles, in terms of the size of office, who gets chosen for special assignments. That was a big one in GE. We had in Goldman especially, you had U.S. senators came in, premiers, prime ministers of other countries came in, and you got to just spend a little time with them, do briefing. It was kind of an honor. Nobody gave you more money, but it was amazing. You really look forward to that. And so how do you choose people like that? And so often, these things didn't happen often, but to be in the pool of people, it showed such respect for you. So, I mean, those are the things you can do. Responsibility, even opportunities to present. Again, people would rather have root canal than go there to the committee. But down deep, they know this is good. I should do this. And if you're good at it, there's nothing better than say, I had a briefing the executive committee today and it went well. So I think that's why rewards are not hard, but you got to stop thinking rewards equal money. And something now, here's an example. I don't think I put it in the words real quick. You go to a meeting, scenario one, you go to a meeting and you give a report and the boss is sitting there, the division head says, good, thank you, very good, well, good work. Or here's two, the same thing. You go to the meeting, you present, you come back in your office. The head of the division comes in, he puts his head into your office and says, I just want you to know that really helped me out there. That was a great presentation. It really focused the conversation. Same comment, same guy, but instead of saying thank you at the meeting, he comes in and says, what power that is. You haven't spent any money on it. Just it's personal and it's somewhat meaningful. Now, he may want other people to know, and so he may let people know, I thought Ernie did a great job. I mean, just that difference. The same exact person, the same way said, thank you, good presentation. Just stick your heads. That was really good. That helped me. Walk out.
Yes.
So you can never use the excuse, oh, we don't have money, we can't. You can. In the end, you got to pay people so they can feed their family. But you're right. What job do you have? Ability to report. When do you present? More responsibility. Being involved in certain kind of meetings. There's a lot of things you can do that make people feel wanted and powerful.
Yes. Now, operationalize. That's the word. It sounds very interesting to me. And you have experience and you have some unique approaches to operationalize reward systems. So could you give us some examples to explain what does that mean, operationalization?
I, I, I can give you more examples, but I think I mean it as a synonym really when I said you have to hit the bullseye. Again, that bullseye exercise is the one you start with. And the middle is actions and behaviors. That's what it's called. And that's really the operationalization. If you say, I want you to have better relationship with your customers. I don't know what that means. If I was rude, but I mean, maybe I didn't bargain enough on, maybe I bargained too much on price. I know it's a defect. I don't want him to think I'm not good with customers, but so far it's not been operationalized. It's just a statement. So then again, sometimes you say, it's 12, again, back when it's 12 months from now, these people have a much better relationship with customers. They're much more sensitive to customer needs. What are they doing that they weren't doing 12 months ago?
Mhm.
Or you can say, I go to this department and they're really customer sensitive. I'll go there, I don't see it. What do you see that you don't see? What do you see here that you don't see here? Uh, it's key because once they hit the bullseye, you can always measure that because something tangible is happening. It might not be quantitative, quantifiable, but he wouldn't say, he says, I want yellow neckties. Why? Now, if you go to China, you find you wear different colors at a funeral, color might matter. You can be rude without meaning to be. But I'm saying usually, then what matters? So I mean that's operationalization. You can measure it, you can reward it, you can teach it. You go to HR and say, teach people to have more passion. But if I say, teach them, these are the three things that tell me they need to get, I can teach that. If I can, I have somebody.
Okay,
So that's hit the book. Tell me what behaviors you want to change.
right.
In fact,
Right.
it was B.F. Skinner. When people say, you don't believe me, he would say, I do believe you. What you do speaks so loudly, I cannot hear what you say. What you do. Everything's possible. What do you want to see them do differently?
Differently, right? So let me just imagine an example of what you just said. Like the outcome is that we want more customers by improving relationship. Okay, so what behaviors? Bullseye, what behaviors will change that? Well, we used to have like no more than 3 minutes of answering customer complaints. And we the passing the ball to other departments was the practice, and that really pissed customers off. And that was bad for our retaining customers. That now we're going to change the behavior, that we're going to drill and teach each agent who answers the call that you are going to make sure you do not pass the call to someone else or to the supervisor until you have spent quality minimum how much time. And your goal is to figure out what the complaints are about and solve the problem on your own, and whatever that behavior. So we'll focus on that behavior, and then we'll lead to the results. Is that a good example?
It's a good example. And it's not instead, it's a good example, period. But it might be, for example, you're counting the number of rings and the number of phones and how long it takes to take in one department. And sometimes what happens is, real life example, last week I found out that I still get some insurance through the Goldman system, and they had changed the plan administrator. So it's the same company, but when you call the company, they can't answer the question because they're not administering the policy. And I knew that I didn't know what to do. And I go to have my son for a medical treatment. They don't take the card. They said, no, it expired December 31. I said, oh, I know what happened. We still have coverage, but it's a different administrator. So I call Goldman, and they say, no, they're correct. We don't cover that anymore. You're still covered. You're covered now through a different company. Now, that could be the end of the transaction. It's informative, but it leaves me hanging. But what the Goldman person says, listen, I know the number there. Hang on. Let me stay on the call. Let me transfer and see if we can get this done. So the person at Goldman didn't know because they're not administrating. This is a true story. It only happened last week. But the Goldman person knew that I wouldn't know what to do next. So he said, hang on, let me transfer you. So they got on. And then before turning it over, he said, Sally, I'm here with Mr. Kerr. He's one of the people that was covered by Goldman, and now it's being covered by this new company. So he's got questions, and it's about his son, and he should be transferred as dependent. So I would have maybe said it, but I'm not sure I could have framed it. So that's a perfect example of customer service I'm proud to tell it that Goldman did this very well. And they were saying no to me. They couldn't help me, but in a way that didn't leave me hanging, knowing what to do next. So
Right.
it's more than just make my phone not ring. It's now, if you had a bad system, they would now punish her because she spent 20 minutes on that call or 15 instead of 5. But actually, it was good customer relations because she ended up getting the customer, in my case, what they needed.
So the bottom line is the leadership needs to prioritize what culture they want to set. So in the Jack Welch case, it's teamwork, interdepartmental collaboration, and that's the culture. You'll be looking really good if you play along the teamwork track rather than just being selfish. And in Goldman's case, is the customer service is priority. We prioritize customer service. And along that direction that's set by the leadership on top, then they can come up with what specific performances and what behaviors and how to operationalize the reward system to reward the behaviors that leads to the leadership's priority. Either it's teamwork or it's customer service. Correct? Did I summarize it correctly?
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, I read that sometimes the people underneath are the ones that know. In this case, I don't have it, but I could transfer the call. But sometimes it's the ability to have people who do a job know how to improve it. In this example, the boss said, okay, we'll do this and do that. But I'm saying a system that's open, because a lot of the best changes come from below. And it's not even that they have to be rewarded. And I think some do, but many, they want to do the right thing, but they don't. The way they're doing it now is what some high-level person told them to do. And it's so you got to make it safe. It's amazing what your people know that they don't tell you. We had a case where we finally had workshops where they could come in and contribute ideas. And they were talking to the guy who ran a copy center. He gave people a 2-page report, and there was 11 pages of wasted stuff that the copy machine would put out, leader code and code. And he would rip that out and give people only the 2 pages. And when it was safe, we made events to permit him to do that. And it turned out he could save on his machine $62,500 a year, counting the cost of paper, the cost of hauling the paper away, the cost of ink. Because if you got 13 pages if you wanted to, but he was taught, give them only the content. He would throw the 11 away, give them the 2. He did that, and all the copy machines in G were doing this. It was a major saving. So in this case, you created in the case I gave you before, management knew what to do, and this one was obviously rewarded for doing it. In some cases, though, it's amazing what other people can do to help you, whether it's teamwork or passion or cost cutting or efficiency. But you got to permit it. And sometimes a suggestion box on the wall is enough. It's better than nothing. I'm not criticizing it, but an environment that permits that. It's amazing what your people know, and you don't know.
Yes.
Because they do it and you don't. And if you just make it safe.
Yes.
Just make it safe. They don't think you're faulting them.
Right. So to add what I previously summarized, leaderships are not know-it-all, and often they don't know. Okay. So they got to humbly go down the ladder to the people who are delivering the jobs, doing the work, the employees, the lower rank, because they often know way better, okay, than those on the top. So ask them, respect them, and solicit opinions and suggestions for improvement, and make it safe for them to say things that may not be very glamorous or complimentary. So that is before they decide what culture, what behavior to be rewarded. Okay, so here's another question. Have you experienced that after every aspect of reward systems were correctly implemented, starting from defining to operationalizing to measuring and rewarding, you still did not achieve the desired results?
Well, that can easily happen. It's sometimes called the most fundamental equation in psychology, and it says ability times motivation equals performance. And your rewards can do a lot for motivation and esteem and recognition and having the boss pop in your office and tell you this is great. You can do wonderful things to improve motivation, but there still has to be, it depends on the job, but in most jobs, there's a certain amount of expertise or competence that is required. And the reason they put a multiplication sign in the formula in psychology, ability times motivation equals performance, is because anything times zero is zero. So if you motivate people, I say to you, I'll give you $1,000 if you fly around the room. Nobody. Okay, 5,000, 10,000. They do it for one if they knew how. The more you make the reward attractive, the more frustrated they get that they don't know how to do it, or they don't have the tools to do it. So you're right. I mean, and you want motivation. I mean, at the higher number, but we always say in any kind of intervention, any kind of initiative, work the side of the equation that's low. So if motivation is already at 10, you can make it 11. But if a performance is only 2, ability is only 2, 10 times 2 is 20, 11 times 2 is 22. You've only added a little bit to efficiency. But take that same little bit and add it on the bottom. 10 times 2 is 20, 10 times 3 is 30, 10 times 4 is 40. Look how much it pays. So if you know that your people are basically want to do the right thing, it really pays to put some resources into training, give them more expertise to do it. Or if you hire a doctor and a lawyer, you don't expect that to their expertise. Hopefully they have that when they come in, that's their credential. So there's a case where you want to build a competent motivation system. So you're right, it's a good point to remember. You work on rewards and you work on motivation, but that may not be the key here. And jobs get specialized as, so yeah, it's a great, your response is perfect.
Thank you. So in human-centered organizations, where employees increasingly demand work to improve their life, and employers are expected to be servant leaders in creating the environment and work befitting employees' talents. Do you believe a good reward system is always needed as a behavioral and motivational tool?
You can build short-term substitutes for it. So I would say always needed. I mean, I joined the Army as well. My choices were worse. So I joined the Army. They didn't give me any incentive to join, but I didn't want to be a draft dodger, was what they called it in those days. And in the short term, the boss says, I really hate to tell you this. I know you're planning an anniversary dinner, but would you mind doing that tomorrow night? We just got a rush order from a customer, and I just can't do it without your help. So if you have a good relationship and you don't do that too often, you can avoid all the niceties and you say, look, we're all in trouble here. Now, if you say that and the boss goes home at 5 o'clock every day, it wears thin pretty easily. So it helps if the boss is in there, paying that cost with you. But in general, you're right. Other than that, most people, if you have a good relationship, there are times when there's nothing in it for you this time. All it means is you get angry by your spouse when you come home late. I know that, but I need you here. And that's fine. But you can't live like that. And these people have continued crisis. And people will stay if they have to, but now they're staying for the paycheck. And A, they're not going to work as hard or as well, and B, they'll leave when they get a better offer. So use it sparingly. So technically, it's not always, but be aware when you're not honoring these principles, they're good principles, and you're going to pay a price. But you won't pay it once in a while, especially if they see you're sitting there getting dirty with them,
Mm-hmm. Right. So also, if the goal of the company is to be more innovative, to be more creative, they can always use the principles of rewarding innovative, creative behaviors. So rewarding tools are neutral. They are not like, if I use rewarding system, then I will be disincentivized in other ways or have any side effect. It can be used for whatever the goals and priorities of the organization. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So last question. I ask everyone in my interview the same question. If you can use less than 5 words to describe Steve Kerr's personal brand, what would these be? What does the Steve Kerr brand stands for?
Well, fewer than 5 words, I can't say much, but I would say always make it safe. Always make it safe for them to do the right thing. Always make it safe for them to tell you what they think. when I do performance appraisals my whole career, I said, when you come in, you must also tell me the one thing that if I did differently would help you do your job better. Make it safe, and they will tell you. That guy in the Xerox thing, we created a thing called Workout. He felt safe enough to say, I had to save $62,500 a year just on my machine, and there's 100 million machines around GE, and it had to do with the paper thing. But he didn't mention it because he didn't know. He didn't know. So you make it safe, and you'd be amazed at what people know and how much they'll help you and how much they'll flourish it. If they and that's the thing. Always do your best to make sure it's safe. Well, can I give you one last example of that, or are we out of time?
Please, go ahead.
In the early days of Workout, we had low-level people challenging the practices of high-level people. So we always had that, is it safe, is it safe? So Welch had this, he had great models and metaphors. So he said, he said, you have a really old car. It's unreliable. It breaks down all the time. It's terrible. Question, was it a lemon when you bought it? It was always a bad car, or did it used to be a good car? Answer, who cares? He said, what's the difference? What does it matter? Maybe it was never a good car. Maybe the point is, so he said, we have policies, we have practices, we have procedures, we have rules. Are they good? Well, they might have been great. We're not criticizing you. We had reports. They used to get reports that were very valuable. Now we have a new vendor. A new vendor gives you reports online and they're up to date. So nobody's reading this. So you don't blame the person putting out the report. You say, stop it. Why? Because we don't need it now. So he said, again, make it safe. Those are examples. He said, stop. If you go and say, he said, the worst thing in the world is root cause analysis. Who did this? He said, what does that do for you? You don't care who did it. You don't care why they did it. The car is not working, sell the car. Maybe, you don't say it was a bad, even if it was, if you tell the guy it's his idea and it's a bad idea, he's going to get defensive. Don't tell him that. Just say it's a car bad. Get out of it. Your policy, your report's not helpful. Get rid of it. Reports, approvals, used to be 8 people signed off. Maybe it wasn't needed in that thing. I don't care. You need 8 people now. What are you doing? Make it safe. And then the people will find ways, just make it safe. They underutilized resources. That's the worst problem we have.
Ah, that's so insightful. I have a bonus question, okay? For those who still are interested in hearing his wisdom, okay? I think I'm not the only one who are bothered by the state of our politics and the system that our political system seems to be not working, okay? One example is that the Democrats or the Republicans, they vote for the weakest candidate of the other party so they can have a better chance at the general election to win. And all this gerrymandering and the things that created this gridlock in Washington. So there are people, they're very intelligent professors and political consultants who are advising about ranked choice voting system, which are implemented for some gubernatorial and mayor elections already. And they would like to see the ranked choice voting system for the primary for presidential elections. And they also recommend term limit for the US Supreme Court justices. So I want to hear you, okay? Since you have worked for Goldman Sachs and GE for so many years, if we view our country as if it's a giant corporation, okay, and from the lens of reward principles, what do you think about the ranked choice voting system and the US Supreme Court justices?
Well, they're easy questions to think about because I think the costs and benefits are pretty visible. This is not like trying to choose 2 distributors of tungsten or something like that. But there are pluses and negatives. The question is, can you maximize? I think you can. I think you've got good ideas. Both of those are. But the term limits, for example, the danger is people will become less competent mentally, their memories will fade. And as a Supreme Court justice, for example, knowledge of the law of history is so important. If you begin to have blurry memories, you're just going to be less effective. So the trouble is, you have people in their 90s still very good, and you have people in their 70s who already shouldn't be given sensitive work. So I think term limits should be at the right period. And you can't, I mean, I guess you could make it performance contingent. If you had really trustworthy tests of competence, like they're always saying they want US president, they wanted Trump to take one, now they want Biden to take these tests of mental fitness and so on. But absent that, you can substitute. You pick a year where probably it's early enough so most people will still be competent when they hit that spot. So for example, you said, I don't know, 75. You'd get gerontologists know this much more than I do, so I won't. But you pick some number like that. Now you run the risk that some really brilliant people will be asked to leave while they're still brilliant. But in the end, assuming there are brilliant people behind them, I mean, the person's had a long career. It's honorable if it's set as a limit. It's not embarrassing to them. It's just like you have right now. We have people that are two-term limited as governors, and it's no about Manchin, for example. He's been very popular in West Virginia. He's going to leave because he has to. So it's turned down. So I think it's no offense, and probably even if you lose a really good person, hopefully there's brilliant judges to replace. So I think term limits make sense. The risk you run when they sit there for years and they're muddling up things, especially with the 5-4 decisions that you tend to get, it could really make a difference. So I think it's valuable. I think that you can also do it instead of age, you can do it by number of terms. And that can be done as well, in the average. But I think it'd be sharper if you peg it as best you can to a mental acuity, but that's a fine tuning. The one thing I would say though is everything gets political. And the way they were badgering Ginsburg, for example, the Democrats to step down because she was old and they didn't know who would be president next time. It turned out it was Trump, and they wanted to be able to rush her, and she wouldn't leave. That was her life. She was still very sharp, but she did die. And sure enough, Trump got to appoint his successor. And I think that was a big deal. And the same thing. So that's the only thing with term limits. It'll happen automatically, but then now you didn't know when Ginsburg was going to die because she didn't know. So you could still nag them to step down. But now if you know your term's going to end anyway in 2 years, look how selfish you are. Our party has the president now, in 2 years and it might be somebody else. So I think you will increase the intense pressure on these people to leave it somewhere in that last term anyway. But it doesn't matter that much to me. It's still, on balance, your idea is a good one, because just say that maybe they had 3 terms of 6 years, and the 4th term is up to 6 years. And it could well be that people will get into the tradition of retiring early so that their party, unless the other party's in power, because then it doesn't come in. So that's what I think about that. And I think you can manage the negative thing, just as I said. On the ranked choice, it depends on, it's still got pluses and minuses, but what you're preventing is awful. I mean, the worst thing in the world is having these the long delayed runoffs. I mean, long could be 30 days, but it's awful what happens to the democratic process during that time. Whereas I think ranked choice usually it's instant, and right, you don't have to, by the end of the weekend, you know who won usually. And these things where it goes, look what happened in Georgia. I mean, out of state money comes pouring in. People are crossing parties to vote for the other side to get really weak candidates. All kinds of mischief can happen if you have a delay. So ranked choice has more than one advantage, but the biggest negative used to be, well, you'll get somebody who people don't really love. But the point is, it doesn't prevent the majority winner. I mean, it depends on how you set it up, but you can set it up so it doesn't kick in unless you have somebody who doesn't get 50%. So by definition, if there's a clear choice, it's not interfering with that. It only obtains when you already found out you don't have a clear choice. So in that case, it's not causing it. It's just recognizing the fact that you don't have a clear favorite. Nobody got 50. In that case, it's a much better remedy, especially if it's accelerated revotes, right? I mean, the last place finisher is out, his votes get, that kind of thing. Because I think that you still have the problem, though, of people maybe trying to game the system, but usually the choice votes at the final level, you don't have that problem. They're going to cross paths, they'll vote for their own person. in nomination process where you try to rig it so that the other party is putting up a terrible candidate. They're all voting for him. So you got to be careful. But I think in a ranked choice that might happen in the first round, but usually it's dangerous only if it gets dragged on. And waiting a while for a recount is the worst thing. What you saw in Georgia, people were voting who don't even live in the state, and the billionaires were pouring money into it. And the longer it goes, the more bitterness. It's just awful. So I think nothing's perfect, but both termlets and fourth choice are better on balance than what we're doing now.
Rank choice. Yeah. See, the rank choice for primary will allow more candidates, and it's more fair. The process is more fair and can avoid the ills that you described earlier, So it's just a matter of getting these things operationalized, using your word, operationalized.
That's exactly right. That's what it is. And for term limits, again, it's pretty straightforward because the only thing you get is you get more intense nagging on the part of people in power to get, if they get their judge out of this and get the younger one in. So the third term might be shorter, but both parties would do it. It's natural. It's not obscene. It's logical. You could say, I love you, Ruth Ginsburg, but instead of 1 more year of you, we can get 18 more years of somebody if you let us vote now, replace them now. And on the thing of ranked choice, again, it's plus avoids the biggest minus in the world, which is these delayed second ballots where so much outside money. It's not even the people of Georgia were not even the primary people electing the runoff senators because it was crazy. So you still should be careful. I know it's state by state and it's not my choice, but I wish states would not permit people in the nominating contest to cross parties because there's so much mischief is going on. And you don't have the best of both candidates going forward. You have them sabotaging by putting in the least electable guy or gal and putting them in. So you got more work to do if you have ranked choice, but you can do it. It's still better than what you have instead. And term limits, you just get the one side effect you can't avoid. And it may not be bad. They say, why should you serve your whole 6 years? Resign in the month before our president leaves because the next election we might not have the choice. So let's get your successor. I think it's, so you're getting a long answer, but these are good ideas. I wish you would get them implemented, use your influence. A lot of people.
You have more influence than me, but we, in the future, I probably will edit this just about the last question about rank choice and term limit. And we can send the video to those who have the power to change. It's not going to be easy, but.
Well, you've got, Barry talks about you're a very successful program, but I think it's true that it may also be some areas where people like me get windy. We may drift off into another area that might be not what you want, but you might often, you can even splice through it. So if you have a special interest in this topic, we have, a couple of speakers well in there. So you're organizing now by session, one person, and I assume it goes out. You could even have a partitioning by topic and just kind of edit your tape. So maybe you ask 4 people. And so if you guys are interested in what some people thought about term limits, I'll splice together, 4 interviews that weren't consecutive, but they're all timely. So maybe now I'm just saying, you're right. You can cut it by events. So when you hear one speaker, all thoughts, you can also cut it by thought and have whatever speakers have commented on there. You have a great audience. What I'm told, it's really you did good. You really are. You've impressed people who stay with you, and I think you're very incisive in the way you ask the questions. And I think I appreciate. I think you're really good at what you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We went over by 20 minutes, but that's I love hearing your insights. And
I'm afraid I went over.
People will benefit from your gems of wisdom. Thank you again, and we will stay in touch, and we'll talk about more issues at another time.
That's fine. I appreciate that. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
So.